Hello, everybody. It's Clinton here from TradiePad, and for our tech talk today, I'm joined by none other than our amazing customer support manager, Roger. Hello, Roger.
Hello, Clinton. Hello, everyone.
So we've got a bit of a nerdy subject today, a bit of an interesting subject around device management, and this comes off the back of a lot of the, I guess, support queries that we get from our clients, and the way that we can help our clients and support our clients with managing the devices that they have within their business. And when we talk about devices, it's their phones and their tablets and their computers. And so we're kind of like an IT department for our clients. And so we get all sorts of questions, obviously about apps and the software and the products that we're working and training people on, but also we get general support queries about things like devices. So, Rog, what are some of the questions that we get from people that relate to the devices that they have within their business? You get lots of them.
Yeah, I get quite a variety of different inquiries over the time. I've had a few. Um, they range from forgotten passwords, lost or broken devices, people having issues trying to install apps, and big ones, often their email is not working or issues with their domain. And one that's probably relevant to this subject is I get quite a few requests to help set up iPads.
And phones and tablets. Not just
Yep,
not just Apple. Deal with a lot of Android devices out there as well,
yep,
and probably laptops and desktops as well on the odd
yep.
occasion.
Yep, I've helped with setting up a few PCs and getting rid of gremlins off PCs as well. So yeah,
Yes, the dreaded gremlins. So yeah, we thought we'd have a bit of a chat about a really cool technology tool that's out there. It's been around for many, many years, and it's something that we've implemented for a number of our clients over the years, but it's not super common. It's been quite a common tool in the corporate space. Big corporate businesses that have lots of computers and devices that they deploy to their employees, but it hasn't been super common in small business. But it's something that is absolutely ideal for businesses in our space, small or large, where we've got mobile devices that are being used. And every one of our clients has mobile devices. Everyone's got a phone, minimum. And a lot of times there's a phone and a tablet, an iPad or an Android tablet. And then in the office, there's always computers that are being used. So every business that we deal with has a combination of devices. And so there's a really cool tool called Mobile Device Management, or MDM, which is a technology solution that helps a business manage the devices that they use, whether they're employees' devices or their company devices. You have different levels of control and functionality depending on who owns the device and what you want to do with them. But we thought a discussion today would be great, just to give a bit of information and framework around what mobile device management is and how it can benefit businesses. And then we've got a couple of example case studies of a couple of our clients that we've helped out with this in the past. So I'll get into a bit of screen sharing. I'll just turn my screen sharing on. So we're going to talk about mobile device management, but I'll start with just talking a little bit about the what we call the foundation of technology usage within business. We like to call it the business technology platform, and it's essentially the combination of technology tools and technology solutions that get used within a business to help run the business operations. We deal primarily on a day-to-day basis with the operational software and the financial software. So operational software being job management systems and project management systems, financial software being things like Xero and MYOB. But we also help our clients out with their devices and with their communication and cloud storage. So we'll just have a little bit of a touch on each one of these things. Communication and cloud storage is like the foundation for every business. essentially it's email. So it's the email platform that gets used to run the business. Some people will use things like Gmail or Hotmail or Outlook as their email solution, but there is business grade email out there that you can use to run your organization using your business domain name. So things like Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 that handle email, but they also handle calendar, contacts, things like cloud storage, so OneDrive and Google Drive for storing all your files, company files and company documentation. And there's lots of messaging apps out there as well. So there's quite a bit that goes into this communication and cloud storage component of the platform that sometimes ties in with the rest of the solutions. So the job management system might integrate into email, but that's one really big component that we help our clients out with. Next one being the what we think is the core of the technology platform, operational and financial software. So your job management systems and your accounting systems. And as a lot of people know, there are heaps of those out there. So we've got all these different job management systems that we work with. We help our clients find the right one and get it set up and train them how to use it. Job management system, construction management systems for builders. This is just a few of the solutions that we work with. So there's a whole lot to discuss in that just by itself. But today, we're really focusing on this piece, the devices and the network that a business uses to access their apps and access their software and their technology. So the devices and the network is the key kind of hardware piece of the business technology platform that lets workers access their apps and communicate. It lets the office do what they need to do with managing admin, business owners being able to have a computer in the office, devices out in the field, have everything synchronized so it's all working together. So the devices are a huge component of any business's technology platform. And with the importance of the devices and the range of different ownership options that are out there, mobile device management helps control all of that and make it a bit more consistent and a bit easier to, I guess, manage the devices that are used within the business. So we'll start with talking about ownership options, device ownership options. And this is a really, it's not certainly not a one size fits all. We have businesses that have all sorts of different ownership options in terms of who owns the devices, whether it's the individual worker or it's the company. And a lot of people will have a blended approach. Some people will have their workers bring their own phone to work, but they'll give them a tablet. So, Roger, what's some examples of some of the clients that we've worked with that have had a mix of device ownership?
Oh, we've had them where the company will just buy the devices outright and then distribute them to the workers. Then if you've got a situation where somebody doesn't want to carry two devices around all the time, then the bring your own device sort of makes sense. And that's when you can have the worker use his own device, but it's got the work profile separated on the device. So his personal stuff stays personal, but he's got what he needs to do his job on his own device, as opposed to carrying around two devices. But we see quite a bit of a situation where I think companies are probably leading towards buying more and more of their own devices. And I think in the future, you're going to see these become more and more specialized.
Yeah.
If you take the situation that you talked about before, we all walk into the supermarket, we see a person walking around the supermarket with be it an iPad or an Android phone, scanning, what have you. That device is exactly what we're talking about. It's being locked down to a high degree, so it's specialized, can't do anything else. You can't go on the internet with it. It's just the tool of the job.
Yeah, and I guess that's what we're all about. So another tool of the trade. The devices are just another tool. They're probably the most used tool in the toolbox for a lot of businesses because they're used to communicate job information to the workers, collect information, produce their invoices. There's such a critical tool that gets used within the businesses these days. So on the screen, we've got three of the main different management types that you'll see. And essentially, it's a separation of either personally owned devices or company owned devices. So starting on the left here, COBO, so they're company owned devices, and they're used for business only purposes. So the device is owned by the organization, and the only thing it gets used for is business related apps or software, or like Roger was saying, the devices that get used in the supermarkets for scanning things, or in Bunnings, the guys, you see the guys with their little devices that they're scanning things with. So that's locked right down. That's what's called a fully managed device. So it's owned by the organization and it's completely managed for work purposes only, with a lot of controls and restrictions applied to that device so that it can only be used for a certain task. So that's kind of the highest level of control and supervision. And we have some clients that have that, but this next option is becoming more of the preferred option, where there'll be a company-owned device, but the worker has it for personal usage as well. And so that brings with it some risks. What are some of the risks you've heard about, Roger, with having people use their work device for personal purposes?
Well, you can compromise the email that might be on there that belongs to the company. You can simply just lose the device, and you lose company data with it.
Yeah. So we've got some extra info there around the fact that the device it's company owned, but it's personally enabled, where on the device you have what's called a work profile and a personal profile. And so in the work profile, we can apply the work-related apps and the work-related data and have controls around that. But we can allow that device to have a personal profile as well, where the worker is able to put their own personal apps and their own personal information on that device, but it keeps them separate. And so the benefit of that being that if that worker leaves and that device has to come back, that personal profile can be taken off that device like that. So it allows for the separation of work and personal stuff, but on a company-owned device. And so it's a managed device. It's what's called a fully managed device that allows the business to apply restrictions and controls and what can and can't be done on it, but allow that little bucket of personal information to happen on that device as well. So it's a little bit more flexible and open than the full company-owned device, but with the necessary controls. And then the last one is where it's a personally owned device, an employee-owned device. They bring their own device to work. You probably hear BYOD in a lot of schools these days because the kids are bringing their own devices to school. And this is quite a common thing. These device management solutions are common things in schools, where a work or a school profile can be installed on that personally owned device. So the employee owns the device. They're responsible for the device, for maintenance and whatever. But the business is able to apply a work profile on that device that holds all of the work-related information, the apps and the data, and the permissions and security. But that's just a little bucket of information on that personally owned device. So if that worker leaves, you can hit a button and that profile comes off that device. And you can even go to the extent of saying, well, the work profile will apply between certain times of day or certain locations. You can make it location-based, not so useful for mobile businesses like our types of clients, but some corporate businesses will say, well, when you get to work, the work profile will be installed on the device and it will be there. And when you leave work, the work profile comes off. And so it's like magic. All this stuff's kind of being added and taken off the device without anyone having to do anything. And that's all because it's being managed by this mobile device management software that sits in the background and is controlling all of this information flowing around these devices.
A good point there too is the distinction between bring your own device is that the owner of the device, they can actually remove the profile themselves. Whereas the ones that are more supervised, they will be prevented from removing the profile from the device.
And they can also be prevented from removing apps and controlling settings. So we'll talk a bit more about that when we get into the specific functions. But the idea of the mobile device management software is it gives us a bit of a dashboard that we can see our devices, whether they're personally owned or company owned. You can see the devices and a bit of information about the device, whether it's an Apple or an Android or Windows computer or an Apple Mac computer, doesn't matter. You'll be able to see all of those devices, see whether they're company owned, whether they're personally owned, what settings and restrictions they have applied to them. And we can also deploy or enroll new devices when a worker comes on board. So in the instance where it's bring your own device, new worker starts, they've got their phone, you can hit a button and push that work profile onto their device without having to touch their device and do anything. So it gives you a lot of control and efficiency with getting new workers up to speed and getting the apps and the information that they need, whether it's personally owned or if it's a company-owned device. Same thing. In the past, when we've helped our clients set up devices, you've got to set them all up one at a time. You've got to create an Apple ID or a Google account for the device. You've got to install all the apps one at a time, go through the whole kind of process. And if there's multiple devices, you've got to do that time and time again. Whereas with this mobile device management software, we can create a blueprint or a kind of like a template of all of the settings and all the apps that we want. The new device gets enrolled into the system, and it just pushes all that information on in one hit, installs all the apps, configures all the settings, and just like that, it's like magic. The device is ready to go. We've got consistency with how things are set up and configured. We've got all the apps on there that we need. So it makes a massive difference to, doesn't matter whether it's one device or multiple devices, but a massive difference to the management and the deployment of devices for staff.
If in time a new app comes out that you've adopted to use, you can push that out to all those devices as well.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's a common one. And then that's when we get the calls around, oh, I don't know how to install apps. I can't remember my Apple ID. I don't know what my password is. So it solves one of those support queries that we get coming through. In terms of the functions that are available and the controls, so there's a bunch of security controls. This is probably the most powerful, I guess, or controlling function that's out there. If someone loses a device and that device has got company information on it, that it could be detrimental if it gets in the wrong people's hands, you can click a button to wipe that device to make sure that information doesn't get lost or compromised. You can, if a device is lost in a vehicle or something, we've done this for clients before, we can play a sound on the device. I had this with one of my plumbing clients that lost his phone, and he thought it was in his car somewhere, but he wasn't sure where. And so we were able to make it play a sound, and he found it had gone under his seat and under the mat under the seat. So it was, he looked for ages to try and find it, but it was by playing that sound that he was able to find it. And then we've got a bunch of, there's just kind of basic settings of things that we can control within the profiles around passcodes and around what they can do. We'll go on to the next slide that shows a few more of those functions and controls, but this is the, I guess, the setup of the profile that gets applied onto the device that is then controlling the settings or the configuration. So this is just a screenshot of an example of a device that we have under management and under control. It shows it's an Android. It shows when it was created, when the profile was created. And this is just some of the settings. It's just a very small snippet of some of the settings and the controls and restrictions that we can apply. You can turn off or on the camera, or allow or disallow the camera, Bluetooth, adding users to the device. There's one around location settings, so we can control whether or not people can turn on or off their location settings on their device. There's a whole heap of controls. And so it allows you to configure all of these different settings that you want to control, and then apply that to a device or multiple devices in one hit. So this is showing the settings for this individual device. And if we go into that device and have a bit more of a look at it, it shows location of the device, when it was reported. It shows a bit of information about the device with make, model, serial number. And then this is a bit of an action log of what's gone on with that device, where location tracking's turned on, apps have been installed, a sound was played. This is a profile, configuration profile that was applied, where we've turned off the ability for location changes to happen and the ability for people to uninstall apps. So it means that you can apply the apps from your main console, install apps, but the worker can't delete them. So you've got a lot of control over that device, whether it's company owned or personally owned, over what people can do.
I think the point there is the console gives you visibility on all the devices. You're not having to log into each separate Apple ID or Google account to figure out what's going on with that device. You've got it all in one place. In one
Absolutely.
console.
Yeah. A lot of people, I've found a lot of people use things like Find My iPhone or Find My iPad, and they'll share kind of the location services associated with the Apple IDs. But typically those Apple IDs have all been set up individually. And so to manage them, you've got to be logging in and logging out of those different Apple IDs to view their location and control the device. So it works, but it's pretty clunky, and you've got to kind of be going in and out of different accounts to manage it properly. Whereas with something like MDM, it's all in one central place. You've got control of all those devices, all those locations, all those apps in one central console. So yeah, you're spot on there. It just makes it so much easier. So a couple of examples of some clients of ours where we've used mobile device management. We've got an appliance installation business here in Sydney. So only a small business, so 4 field staff, and only a few devices. But this is an example of how this type of tool, doesn't matter what size you are, whether you got 4 devices or 400 devices, it doesn't matter. It's still a powerful and useful tool for everybody. So a couple of phones, 4 iPads out there, all company owned devices, and a few different software products being used within the business. And so the issues that they were seeing was they've got company devices that were being used by the workers for work and personal purposes. So it was kind of blurring the line between personal stuff going on the device and work stuff going on the device. They found that when they didn't buy all the devices in one hit, so it was inconsistent with the way that the devices were set up and configured, with the permissions and controls and the Apple IDs and the apps that were on them. So it was kind of a bit of a hodgepodge of everything. And whenever there was updates for apps or updates for the operating system, some people weren't doing the updates. Some of the devices were out of date and were not functioning properly because they didn't have the latest operating system and they didn't have the latest apps. And that was always a bit of a challenge. People forgetting their passwords to update their Apple IDs, to update their operating systems, and devices were being left behind on job sites or lost altogether. And so we helped that client set up a device management solution. So this is Roger's project. He helped the client. You want to talk through the solution, Rog?
Yeah, basically we just set up the whole system to begin with, and once that took quite a bit of time to do. But once it was in place, then when it came to adding another device, it was a lot quicker than if you'd done each device individually, because once the device was enrolled, it just pushed the profile out, installed the profile, and everything you needed was installed onto that device.
And
Took
one
a
of the,
fair bit of time to set up, but once you're set up, it's so simple. It really is good.
and consistent. I think that's probably the big thing. We've got consistency with the way that each device has been set up with settings and apps and configuration. So we've got that kind of template that gets used, or the blueprint that gets used, to then whenever a new device comes or a replacement device is required, it's just like, whoop, it's exactly the same as the last one. One of the big things that that worked well for this client as well was the managed company Apple IDs. So for those that that have set up Apple IDs before, you'd know that the Apple ID needs to be created. It has a password. You've got to authorize it. It's its own little kind of bucket of information that is completely independent of any other Apple ID. And so to manage it, you've got to log in specifically to that Apple ID to be able to change things and control things. Whereas with an MDM solution, and when it's set up correctly, you have company managed Apple IDs. So as a company, you've got a whole bunch of Apple IDs that you can create, that you then have full control of from one central console. And those Apple IDs get used then on the devices for apps, and it's kind of company level management instead of individual account management. And the last item there, location of devices can be seen at any time and lost devices disabled. So this particular client had a couple of instances where devices were left. They weren't sure where, and we were able to see they were on job sites. And in one instance, the device was lost or was actually stolen. We could disable it and turn the device into a brick, so it can't actually be used. So just some good management tools that had a complete different control and what they had with just the devices by themselves before. And then one more case study here, slightly larger business. So a commercial carpentry business with 10 field staff. And they had a mix. They had personally owned phones and company owned iPads. So it's kind of that mix of BYOD and then company owned, company controlled, business only devices. Using ServiceMate as their job management system. And the issue was that they had that mix of company-owned and personally owned devices that were used for work and personal purposes. So the phones they're obviously a personal phone, but they had work information on them. The iPads were company-owned and only for company use. So they were locked right down and controlled. But we had these phones that were personally owned. So it was kind of each person had a mix of a BYOD and a company-owned business only. And so the MDM solution allowed us to set that up so that we've still got confidence in the security of the data and the information and the apps and the consistency of setup, but that mix of ownership types. And we had an instance where before the iPads were being managed, the business would set up the iPad and give it to the worker, but the worker was then going in and changing settings. And so they were turning off things like location services and some of the account information, whether it was on purpose or not, who knows? But we had that issue where things were being changed. And so with the mobile device management, again, we were able to set up the managed Apple IDs. We're able to have work profiles on the device, on the personally owned device, so that we could separate the work stuff from the personal stuff. And if a worker moved on, we could click a button and just take that profile off that device. And so it was confidence in the security of the business data, in the workers bringing their own devices to work. We could lock things down so they couldn't change settings on the company-owned devices. And we're able to see the devices wherever they were at any time. And it made it really, really easy to then set up new workers that came on board with a new company device, or pushing a profile onto their personal device. And it just made what used to be a really time-consuming and laborious task really easy with a click of a button and a deployment of the profile. So it's little bit techie, little bit nerdy. I love this stuff. And Roger, I know you love this stuff, but a lot of our clients don't really want to know about it. They just want it to work.
Yeah, when the feedback we get too is when it does work, they're really happy. It's
yeah.
You hear it.
That's what we want. Happy customers that love their technology. So yeah, if you'd like to know a bit more, you can contact us through our website or through our social media channels. And if you just mentioned device management, whether you're an existing customer or a new customer, it doesn't matter. We can help out anybody with this. A lot of our existing clients probably don't know that this is an option, something that we can help with. So more than happy to help out with getting it set up for you, or even if you're a new client that hasn't worked with us before, we can help out with all the other stuff that we mentioned earlier. But yeah, device management is a bit of a foundation, no matter what size and what stage of business you are, and all the different ownership models. Ultimately, it comes down to education from our side. We'll help you understand what the best model is for you and help get it all set up, and then help you train you how to use it or manage it for you. So just reach out to us, mention device management, and hopefully we can set up some MDM solutions for you. Thank you, Roger.
Thank you.
It's been a good chat. Thanks, mate. Thanks for your help.